The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, for the couple of folks that are on here, we'll go ahead and get started in a couple of minutes. We're supposed to have about 10 or so people on the call right now. We only have 2, so I'm going to give folks a couple more minutes to get on, and then I'll just go ahead and get started at a little after 3:30 then. Well, it may just be the 3 of us on this afternoon, so if folks get on, I may come back to this slide or copy and paste the bit.ly into the chat window for you guys. For the 2 of you on the line, if you have any questions or anything like that, just go ahead and put them in the questions bar. My name's Nathan Craver. My contact information is on the next screen, or on a screen later on in here. But this is really intended to be a webinar for new users or folks that are maybe new administrators at the LEA level. And for the both of you that are on here, I know that you're just LEA folks and not charter, so we'll probably focus mostly on the LEA screen today. But just to go through and look at a few updates and introduce folks to some of the features of the DLMI and what's its purpose and things like that. So just some information here. Once you have this bit.ly, this presentation won't go away. You will have access to it for as long as I have access to Google. And just a couple of features here. So the actual collection system itself is just located at that address where it's schools.nc.gov/NCDLMI. Just as a note, all the data that we do put in the DLMI is considered public information. So someone could potentially call your school and ask you for any of the data, or call your LEA and ask you for any of the data in the DLMI. So one easy way to not have to send them to worry about downloading and then sending it to them is just to send them to the second bullet there, which is the DLMI data website, where they can go and pull the data question by question as needed there. Bullet 3 is just the user's guide. I will show you what that looks like in a little while when we go through the system. And then the 4th bullet is a wiki that houses all of the webinars and resources in relation to the DLMI. So As you guys know, Wikispaces will be going away at the end of the year, so we actually will be migrating that onto a new location. And once that's figured out, we will update that web link as well. What is the Digital Learning and Media Inventory? Back in 2015, we realigned the DLMI to the progress rubric. And the purpose there is so that when you're filling out the progress rubric, which you guys may or may not have been on a webinar for that progress rubric and know that there is another system out this year that allows you to fill out the progress rubric. But the idea here is that the Digital Learning and Media Inventory should be a tool that's used to help fill that out, to guide that in terms of a data perspective when you're looking at the rubric, to help you know how you're progressing. And the whole point of that is to help inform local planning and budget decisions. So if I'm trying to decide what the right one-to-one device is for me moving forward next year, or how much bandwidth should I get, I can look at the DLMI, compare my school to other schools in the state, and then say, oh, well, I might want to go with Chromebooks, or get 1 gig connections or things like that. So it also informs the school report card. So we do pull data for the school report card, and we also pull this data for state planning and budgets as well. For example, folks do ask questions all the time about, like, what would it cost to do devices, in certain grade levels, or how many schools out in North Carolina are using the learning management system and things like that. So we do use that data there as well. The 5 reports that are currently on the report card are average age of your media collection, how many books are in digital print, what's the student per device ratio, and then some questions around digital access. Are you one-to-one? Are you BYOD? And things like that. So, and then also we do want this to turn around and provide you all with reports on the data that's collected. So if I want to see how I sort of fit in with the state, that reporting tool is there for you as well. And we're going to kind of go through each of these live. So just to give you guys a heads up on what the wiki space looks like. When you go to the wiki space, and I should have had it on the home page, but it's sort of broken up into 6 categories here. If you click on any of these buttons, it will take you to each of those. So the first button here that I definitely want to spend time on is the requesting access for new users in your district. So anytime you have a person who comes into your district, you can direct them to this page on how to get access. Unfortunately, right now, I don't have the ability to just create an account. So you have to have an NCID first. Once you have that NCID, then I can get you in, or then we can get you into the DLMI. So NCID is managed locally by LEA or by charter school. If you're not sure who that person is, you can click on either of these links and it will take you out to who's listed for your LEA or for your charter. And then once they have an NCID, they can follow these steps. The biggest challenge that we have at the state level is people picking the correct role. And it really comes down to this word administrator. If you're a techie person, like we have system administrators who manage the back end of systems. And for whatever reason, when teachers and media coordinators read this, a lot of times they read the word administrator like I would and think, oh, that's my principal, so I don't select that. So the easiest way to know is if you're responsible for putting data in, you're whatever level administrator. If you just want to view the data, you're inquiry only. And then if you need to sign off on it, then you need to either be the principal or you can sign off on it as the LEA administrator as well. We will be transitioning this over in the next year or so to the EdCloud, which should hopefully make this a whole lot easier process to manage. Other pages on the screen, the tutorials. Anytime I do a webinar like today, as long as the recording works properly, I will post that here for you to look at and to come back and reference as well. We also have some just some quick features there on a couple of different tools that are within the system. Then we also have some resources here listed, and this is just the user's guide, and that to me is the best tool for you guys to use, is this user guide. It's step by step. For LEA, I can go through and it has screenshots. These are updated for this year with some directions for each page, what it looks like, and I have that in here. For each of the sections for LEA, if you're using this in your schools, you can share this out at the schools, and you can also access this from within the tool. But that's the resources. Frequently asked questions. We have old AMTR data, so prior to 2015. If you want to see historical data, you can click that, or you can email me and I can get that to you. And then a link to the reporting tool. And we'll talk about the reporting tool at the end. But that's the wiki. The next slide on the presentation actually is talking about the DLMI. So we're going to log in to the DLMI, and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time going through the LEA portion. When you log in as an LEA user or as a charter user, you're given an extra couple of levels of access than a person who is a school level user. And again, if you guys have questions, just stop me and put questions in the question feature, and I'll stop and answer those questions as we go through. But as an LEA user, you should see LEA charter, or excuse me, LEA or charter if you're an LEA or charter administrator. So I should just see this tab LEA, and then I should also see school. So the school gives me access to the school's questions. So if I'm an LEA user, I should be able to see all the schools within my LEA. You should also see this upload button, and the upload button we'll talk about in a minute. And then you should also see reports. These other four tabs, or these other tabs, manage permissions and admin, you shouldn't be able to see. Those are just for my screen. And then depending on whether you're a charter LEA, you should have a profile tab. And again, we'll talk about that as we move through. So I'm going to go through each of the tabs just quickly. When you click on LEA, it should take you directly to your LEA. If you have a drop-down menu, or if you see multiple LEAs or an LEA that is not the one that you're assigned to, then we have a problem and we need to get your account adjusted. But you should see LEA there, and I'm going to just use this in the Juvenile Education Services because they're not required to fill this out, and just use them as an example as we go through. Over here on the left-hand side, just some things for you to note when you look at this. This is your navigation feature. You can see that it's sorted by the rubric components: leadership, tech and infrastructure, PD, content and instruction, and data and assessment. So those are your 5 big areas, and then the questions that we ask align to them. When you go through the system, you'll notice that the section that you're on, so right now I'm on shared vision, is bolded. And then the big section that you're on, all of the components of it go to caps, so all caps. So that just kind of gives you an idea of where you are in the process. In case you're not sure where, for whatever reason, not sure what section you're in, that just allows you to kind of see where I'm at and where I'm progressing through this webinar, or through this process. So one of the things that you'll notice in here, the first thing I want to make sure that folks see is this help button. If you're in here and you're not sure what I'm supposed to do on this question, if you click on help, it takes you to that screenshot and then additional information that's come up. So, like for question 1002, you'll notice that it talks about providing a valid link. The first year we did this, we had a lot of folks who just put in, it's on our website or on our board site or something like that. They typed in a description where we asked for links instead of putting in links. So wherever we have questions like that, it just pulls you up to the user's guide to that page. So that works on all 3, so your school folks have access to their document as well. And then you just go through and collect the answer. So here on this page, it's asking you for a strategic plan, and then you would type in your link. And you have 2 options, just to hit save changes. If you're just making an edit to this page, you've gone back and recounted something, you can just click that. Or if you're going through and filling it out sequentially, you can click save changes and go to the next page. You'll notice over here on the left-hand side that I have some red and some green. The professional development focus is turned green, the green indicates that section has been answered, and the red indicates that that section hasn't been started. If you notice when I hit Save Changes, for this one, Shared Vision turns to black because I have answered one of the two questions on this page. So black means in progress, red's not started, green's complete. I'm not going to put their answers in, so let me get rid of their answer. There. So question 1001 is just asking you for your strategic plan and and for the link. I'm just going to quickly go through each of these just to kind of give you an idea of what we asked for. We're asking on 1003, we're asking for, and 1004 and 5, we're asking for personnel at the district level. If you have folks that have this same title at the school level, don't include them here. We ask these same questions on the school level. So we do not want duplicate counts for personnel or devices. When we ask questions at the central office level, we are asking for things that are just located at central office. Now, your technicians, say you have your technicians that are split between 3 schools, but they're paid for out of a central office budget. We want you to count them at the central office level. Don't count them as 0.3 at the school level unless they're paid for out of a school budget code. So anything paid for out of the central office budget, or that's sort of split throughout the schools but still paid for, considered central office, considered here, or count that here. Anything that's paid for out of a school budget code, count at the school level. So each of those questions here, and then under communications and collaborations, we just ask for email and cell phones, things like that. For sustainability, we do ask, and this particular question came in that was new last year. We did ask for how do you fund these 5 categories. So if you purchase devices with local funding sources, put an X there, and so on and so forth. Each of these BUD codes here that have a number are state BUD codes, and then if you use federal funding, then you can click that as well down at the bottom. That is a new row for 2018. Under policy, we ask about the different policies in your district. When you click on those check boxes, you'll notice that you get a link to provide for each of those. If you do have them posted there, you'll see that they do come up. A new one that we asked this year, we did add social media, which is a new box for 2018. So that's policy. Under school networks, we're asked about your different kinds of things for your access points, and how many do you have of each brand. That's important for us when we think about at the state level writing E-rate connectivity contracts or RFPs, trying to get the right, making sure we have the right vendors, not vendors, but the right products included on those. And you'll notice a few times in here, like 2003 jumps to 2005. When you see that in here, we really do know how to count. If you see a question that jumps from 2003 to 2005, that can mean one of two things. That means based on an answer you put in 2003, 2004 might appear, but in this case, what it actually means is we've removed a question. So when you see a skip in numbers, that means that 2004 used to be here, but to align our data, we just deleted that question this year. So we used to ask about would it support 5 gigahertz, but we know that anything that's within 5 years can do that. So we don't have to ask that question anymore. End user devices, this was one that we had quite a bit of confusion on last year and spent a lot of time getting corrected. So whenever we ask at the central office level for anything, again, we do not want duplicate counts. So we're not asking for a sum of the devices in your district. We're asking for what devices you store at central office. So if you have 10 central office personnel, superintendent, assistant superintendent, whoever, and they have Windows machines, then you're going to count those 7 or 8, 10 Windows machines for central office here. We did get feedback after the first year that some districts store their loaners or extras at central office to be shared for their one-to-ones, so they asked us to add in student laptops and desktops at the central office level, so we added 2007A and 2008A. If You do not have any student devices at central office. That's okay. We do need you to go in and just put in the zeros here. 0 to us looks different than a blank. So anywhere that you do not have something, please add in a 0, and then go through these questions as well. Technical support is just a quick section on how do you fix your devices. Network services, how do you get on the internet? 2014, I do want to call your attention to, because this is one that we do have a lot of folks who we have to follow up with, because we know the answer that they put in is probably not the answer that they meant to put in. So if you happen to have a second internet service provider, so if you get your internet through MCNC, but you still pay for a backup service, then we would want you to put in a yes and then tell us about that service. So you'll notice when I click yes, who do I get that from, and then what is the connection speed. So that is if you pay Time Warner to come out with a backup internet in case, for redundancy's purpose, we just want to see how many folks are doing that. That helps us when other folks talk to the FCC about E-rate and what services we're providing and how can we help with that. Just as a reminder, if you do pay for a secondary internet service provider, that's not fundable through the E-rate service, but as it stands today, but those are things that folks do look at. So that's that question. That is the same question that is on the charter school for that. If you are a charter school and do not go through MCNC and get internet from somewhere else, then your question at a charter school would be, to indicate who the other provider is. All of our LEAs connect to MCNC, but not all of our charters do. So for 3001, this is an important question here. If you do have a plan for providing professional development in your district, then you're going to want to put a yes. And I will show you this when I hit Save Changes. You'll notice that a new section pops up. So 3001 asks about who participates in that plan. So when you see 3001, if you put no, you'll notice that that section goes away, and then I'll save this so that the green goes away as well. So now I haven't answered that question. Professional development format, same thing here. I need to change the wording on this question. It shouldn't say external providers. It should just say who are your district's providers, because one of the questions is internally. So, and this brings up a good point that I should have introduced at the beginning. In larger districts, or even in smaller districts or charter schools, oftentimes the person who's responsible for checking the boxes in the digital learning and media inventory aren't always the people responsible for knowing all of these answers. So this may be something that may have to be a team effort. If you've got a professional learning person in your district who would know more of the boxes that would get checked than you do, or than the person filling this out, it is okay to copy this question or email them these questions and fill this out as a team. We're more concerned that the data gets done is accurate, and so this is meant to be a conversation. It's meant to be a team effort in who asks this questions. So it's more heads are better than one oftentimes. So when we look at that there, so those are those questions. Access to digital content, 4001, 4002 just gives you those two questions. How do you store your files, and then how do you share them? Do you have a learning management system? This is yes. This is one of these questions to me that there's some flaws with, but the way that I would ask you to fill this out, or that we ask you to fill this out, is if your district pays for or supplies, basically manages a district-wide learning management system for your school, then put yes. If you have a middle school that does its own thing and another middle school that's doing its own thing, but you don't really manage that, then don't count it here. They have a way to collect that data at the school level. So if you are buying one thing that everybody in your district has access to, or two things, maybe we pay for Canvas for 6-12, but we have a free Moodle for K-5, then check both of those. So brings up the question of how do you really manage Google Classroom. But if your whole district's using Google Classroom, then just go ahead and check that there. Curation and development. We added a new thing to this year. Just when you click through these boxes, you'll notice if you do get digital textbook checked, that we do ask what subject, and then if you ask yes, it's going to ask you which vendor. There is some conversation at the state level about how should we include digital textbooks. Is that something we should provide? How much would it cost? So there's some research going in right now around the idea of adopting statewide digital textbooks. So some folks are asking for more information on that. And then how often and how do you vet digital content? Digital literacy. If you guys have been in your position this year, you'll know that in January or in December we asked for an update, and one of the sections that we asked for an update on was this section. This was new section. It's related to some legislation that came out. Basically, a bill that was written that basically said these exact words: the state will investigate if districts have this. So we asked this question as part of that investigation. And then the last section here is this multi and varied assessments. So 5001 is how do you do district-wide benchmarks? If you check SchoolNet, you're going to get a question that says when. We look at this to plan for heavy months of SchoolNet use to make sure that SchoolNet has the amount of server space and information as needed, so that we make sure that we can do our best to make sure it can hold the number of students that are on at one time. The next thing in here, we have forecasting questions. So if you're planning on doing this at these types of things in the next year, please check yes. If not, check no. It's no big deal if you say yes or no, but one of the things that we do look for is if we see 100% of districts are looking at buying a digital textbook in middle school ELA, that's something that we might try to leverage and do a statewide cooperative purchasing agreement to try to bring the prices down for districts and schools. So that's that section. If you're an LEA user, you'll notice that you have a validation section. That validation just gives you an idea. I can go through and look and see what I have not answered. So if I can't tell why one of these sections is black when I'm finished, I'll click on a school to see if I can find one that is hasn't been updated. But I think most of them are complete from last year. So, but anyway, when you look at this, if there's a section in here that isn't quite finished, it's going to give you the part that hasn't been completed. A lot of schools went back and updated in the January update and finished that as well. But you do also have a schools check section, and what this is it allows me to see all of my schools in my district, and then I can look across here and see what they haven't finished yet and what's updated. These principal names in Swain County are showing up from the January update. So they had their principals sign in January. That brings up a good point that I probably need to have those names cleared back out for the June deadline. But anyway, so the learning environments, you can see we added a question since January in here. We updated a question, so that's why that's partial. Just gives you the ability to see each of your schools and if the principals have signed off or not. So I can find one, let's see, where the principals have not signed off on. So in this particular county, a lot of schools to manage. It gives you a way to see all of that on one screen without having to click through each of the different sections. And so once the principals sign off, you can see that's here. It gives you an easy way just to kind of contact towards that June 30th deadline to make sure that folks are signing off as needed. So those are the main things at the LEA section. I'm not going to go through each of the school questions with the LEA users. If you want to listen to the school user section, I have webinars tomorrow and Wednesday or Thursday on that, on the school sections. But I do want to show you one thing here. When you're filling this out, or asking your folks to fill this out at the school level, and let me pick a school. You'll notice that we have a section on school networks. It's 201. It's 201, and we have a question coming in. Kelly, I will go back through that in just a second. Let me get through this. That was the first part of the webinar. I think you hopped on a little after we got started, so I'll go back over that at the end, and we'll so I won't have to repeat it for the folks who heard it. So I'll go back, I promise. But I want to show you this on 201 through 205 here. If you've got a big school system like Union County does, and there's 52 schools, we don't, a lot of times the media coordinator or tech facilitator is the person filling this out in their district, and this is not necessarily information that they would have access to. So you have a couple of options. You could just send it to them as an LEA user and say, you've got 51 access points or 50 access points, your fiber 100% and 1,000 connection speed. Totally fine if you want to do it that way. A lot of schools would prefer to do it a different way, and one way that we can do that in here is this upload feature. There's an upload tab. If you go to this upload tab, there's a link to download a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is just a real simple spreadsheet. You copy and paste all your LEA codes in here, and then you can input this data. And then when you've got it like you want, drop down to fiber for each of the schools, and you can copy that down for all of them. If all your elementary schools are 1 gig, you can copy that down. You fill that out, hit save as a CSV file, and then when you're ready, you upload it, and it populates those questions for the schools. So you don't have to spend time worrying about typos and things like that. We had somebody last year who ended up having quite a few typos in their district, and with a large school district, that's easy to miss. So had some discrepancy between their E-rate numbers and the numbers reported in the DLMI. So just making sure that you guys see that there. Also, the next tab I do want to show you is this reports tab. Your reports tab and my reports tab are going to look a little bit different because I have extra reports that I have to report on. So you can see I mentioned earlier in the webinar that I report to the school report card. So this is where my school report card reports are. I can just download those reports and send them over to the school report card folks straight from here. But anyway, as an LEA user, you should see LEA reports and school reports in that way. So I had some folks ask me at a meeting back in January, I believe it was, maybe in the fall, I'm not sure. But they were not sure how to get all of their data out of the system. They thought they had to go through and print screen each of the pages. So if I'm an LEA user, I have the ability to come in here, and if I click this export, what this does is it downloads the entire LEA file in a spreadsheet. There's so many rows in that, or columns in that we can't show it on the screen because it takes up, we have a limit in the number of columns that we can display. But it will download every answer in your report into just a spreadsheet for you. And then if you want to see it on the screen, you have the ability to click by section. And so you'll notice one of the things that's new last year, these titles were hard to tell what they were. So we've gone back in and basically just linked in the column headers to the questions. So these are all the questions for 1003. And you should only see your district. I have access to all of them, both charter and LEA there. But if you go down to school, and do the same thing, you have the ability to download the entire school report. And when you click on the sections, you will see all of your schools in your district with all of the answers here. So if you were to click that export button and click download, you would get just an Excel spreadsheet of all of your schools in your district's answers that you can then have all of the sections together. I'm not going to download it because it would be every school in the state and it takes a while to download. But you do have some things in here too that you can do. If you're only interested in seeing certain answers or wanting to download a spreadsheet with just specific columns, you can come in here under Actions and hit Select Columns, and then pick what you want to have in the report. You also have the ability to, if you wanted to just filter by elementary schools, you can select Filter and then filter by school level, so you can just see your elementaries and middles and high, that kind of thing. And then under Format, you do have the ability to come in here and do some fancy stuff, which is a whole nother webinar probably. But you can add up at the bottom by aggregates. You can calculate, compute rows. If you want to divide the number of computers by classrooms, you can do that with the compute feature and things like that. So you have some more features here, but again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. That's more for the reporting that we'll do webinars on after June 30th. And then the last thing that I do want to make sure that you see, because I'm just showing this as much as I can, is this profile tab. I'm just going to pick Alamance Burlington because I have their permission to look at theirs. So I'm going to look at Alamance Burlington, and basically what this does is it just takes the questions in the LEA, the questions that are in the report. And we mentioned one of the goals was to turn this back around to you all to help make decisions at the local level. So when I'm looking at this, I am able to come in here and look at this screen and compare myself to the state averages of different categories. So I'm looking at this district and they don't have a 24/7 access to devices. I know them well enough to know that they don't have a standalone one, but it's included in one of their responsible use bullets. So that's why they don't have a yes here. But I can come in and I can say, well, maybe I want to write this report and I want to look at the 38 who do. I can click on that button, and it does take a minute to pull the query. But when I click on that, hopefully it will load. It should pull up the 38 schools who have school systems who have that report, and then it gives you the link. Unfortunately, it doesn't come through as a live link, but you can copy and paste it and put it in to go see what those different reports look like for each of those. So that's the idea here, is that this also sort of gives you an idea as a quick glance just to see what kinds of things are going on. I might look and say, most of the districts in the state have a director of technology of some kind versus a CTO. How many technicians they have in the district? How am I doing compared to the state average? The X's, anywhere you see an X like this, that means that's what you checked. Over here, that's what the state would be. So 108 districts use local funding and that kind of thing. So you can just click through anywhere that you see a bar graph. You can click through to see the rest of, like, for example, this is the best one in my opinion. So if I look at personal device report, this district issues Chromebooks and sends them home. They issue Windows laptops and they send them home. They issue iPads, but they don't send them home. So that gives them just to see what their district's doing. But then over here is what the state's doing. The purple is the districts that are giving them to students, and the blue or green, whatever color you call that, is those that are sending them home. So you can see we have 80 districts who give Chromebooks, but only 66 who send them home. If I want to look and see which of those 66 are sending them home, I can click on that bar graph and reach out to those districts or look at those districts. And then if I'm only interested in seeing schools that are my size or have the same free and reduced lunch number, I can click on that. And so I filter by the same size as Alamance Burlington, and instead of 115 in my comparison, I'm down to 12. So then I can just look and see how I'm doing against those 12, just to give me a comparison of districts that are more closely related to me. So that's the features within here. Those are the reports that are available that you can get out of here. I'll jump back in the slideshow. So let me see where I'm at. Let's see. We talked about the features. These are just here for you to use. And so the contact information. So I manage the digital learning and media inventory for the whole state. I'm a statewide consultant. So if you ever have any questions about something not working or something's broken, if you're getting an error message or something like that, please reach out to me. If you need a user account moved, I can do that for you, but your regional consultants can also do that. So at the beginning of at the beginning of sort of the DLMI process, which we usually start sending out emails around this time every year. One of the things that your regional consultant should do is get in contact with you about folks that have moved in your district. So let's say you've had an ITF that went from one high school to another and 3 media coordinators swapped places, and you had some principals who've moved from elementary to high school. If you can generate a list of who they are, what school they were at last year, and what school they're going to, and send that to any of the people on the screen right now, we can move those folks for you. So if they've been in the system and they have used the DLMI in the past, but they just have switched locations, that's an easy fix. We just move their accounts from one school to another. No problem at all. But to address the question about how do we get logins for folks who have not been in the system before, or who have not been in the system before, I'll go back to this screen and just go back through that again real quick. On the DLMI wiki, which if you just Google DLMI wiki, this screen is the first answer on Google. But under requesting access, it does go through NCID. And so if they don't have an NCID, say they're brand new out of college, brand new media coordinator, tech facilitator, never have done the job before, they're going to have to get their NCID from whoever manages that locally. And again, this screen, if you click on that, and it'll tell you who in your district should manage that. If they've retired and that list hasn't been updated, there's some phone numbers right at the top of people that you can call at the state who can reset those. Unfortunately, I cannot do that. I don't have access to the NCID system. Once they have that, then they just go to the DLMI, they log in with that, and they're going to request an account. And so based on their account level that they request, I will approve it. If it's an LEA administrator account, I generally reach out to a person. I reach out to the person in the district who I know has been doing it in the past, just to make sure that that is approved. I try not to approve LEA administrator roles without at least knowing ahead of time. Same for charter administrators as well. We are planning to move that over to the IM Ed Cloud, NC Ed Cloud, within the next year. One thing you can also do, if you want to reach out to these folks, Julian Nichols Wilson is on leave right now with some medical issues. So if you're in this region in the South, you can reach out to Jill Darrow or Kathy Parker, or just email me. It's probably the simplest thing with regards to DLMI stuff. It's just be the fastest way to do it. But if you're new to the district and you're not sure who in your schools have the roles, just reach out to those folks and they can download a list, or reach out to me and I can download a list of the people in your school system who currently have logins, what their NCIDs are, and send that to you. I don't have access to their passwords, but I can pull out who are the users and what roles do they have and send that to you if you want that. So just let me know if you want to do that, or you can just generate a list of who's moved where and who's new and send that to me as well, so I can know who to approve. But that's the easiest way to get user accounts. And just to make sure everybody has access, for the folks that jumped on after we got started, all of this information and links to all of the stuff we went through is at this bit.ly, and capitalization does matter. So for this, so it is case sensitive. So if you want to jump on that, if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them. but that is all of the stuff I was going to talk about for the rubric. So if you have any questions or anything, just not the rubric for the DLMI, I'll be happy to answer. Um, I will tell you, as new folks, the toughest part of this is getting principals to sign in, because NCIDs reset every 90 days, and generally principals log into the NCID when it's time to sign off on the DLMI. Otherwise, they don't use it. So that tends to be the hardest part of the job. So anyway, my recommendation and what I always did was I got to be really, really good friends with the person who manages the NCID in my districts. And just the day that I was going to send out information, I had them go in and unlock and reset all of their passwords so that they could go in and have to reset them. So I just did that for all of them because I knew they didn't log in enough to do it. So, all right. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I appreciate you guys attending, and thanks for everything you guys do, and hope you have a great week. And this will be posted on the DLMI wiki within the next day or so. So let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk with you soon. Thanks.